There's a orangutan in my bedroom and I don't know what to do. She plays with all my teddies and keeps borrowing my shoe. She destroys all of my houseplants and she keeps on shouting, ooh. She throws away my chocolate and she howls at my shampoo. There's a orangutan in my bedroom and I don't want her to stay. So I told the naughty orangutan that she had to go away. Orangutan in my bedroom, just before you go, why were you in my bedroom? I really want to know. There's a human in my forest and I don't know what to do. He destroyed all of our trees for your food and your shampoo. There's a human in my forest and I don't know what to do. He took away my mother and I'm scared he'll take me too. There are humans in my forest and I don't know what to do. They're burning it for palm oil. So I thought I'd stay with you. Orangutan in my bedroom, now I do know what to do. I'll fight to save your home and I'll stop you feeling blue. I'll share your story far and wide so others can fight too. Orangutan in my bedroom, I swear it on the stars. The future's not yet written, but I'll make sure it is ours.
Hey, what's going on?
It's mine, Daddy. Noah keeps taking away from me.
Noah, give it back.
No.
Noah, give it back.
No.
I said give it back now. Noah!
Larry, what the hell are you...
Larry!
Larry, you can't just... Oh,
Larry! Oh, are you all right? How did...
Larry! Righto, what's going on here?
Oh, sir, I'm arrested. Oh. Arrest. Oh.
The Slap, Part 2.
Is it time to walk away from the talks, Brexit Secretary?
A few hours after they left today's meeting, Cabinet Ministers heard they were being summoned back tomorrow. Long hours of negotiating have produced a text Theresa May might be ready to present to Parliament. A moment of truth, long delayed, could be approaching. In Strasbourg, the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, was briefing commissioners on the talks so far. The Commission briefed out plans for what would happen if there was no deal. The Vice President of the Commission spelling out that if Britain got heavy, imposing visas on EU visitors, for instance, the EU would retaliate.
If there is no deal, we need to be prepared. And then the basic message here is, we'll do upon you what you will do upon us. So, just have visa-free travel on both sides, and that will make life easier for all our citizens.
Do you know, I don't know why you stand outside my flat every morning. You never get anything.
The morning doorstep vigils at the homes of cabinet ministers like Esther McVey, thought most likely to walk out over any deal, may soon be over. Number 10 is calling in ministers one by one in the hope it can win them over to the draft deal and stop any resignations.
Morning, Mr. Rabb. I almost worry if you're not here anymore.
Some resignations could be more survivable than others. Mrs May couldn't, for instance, lose a second Brexit secretary after David Davis's resignation. In March, this was a glimpse of one part of the draft agreement as work in progress. Green meant agreed, yellow nearly there. No highlighter, no agreement yet. And the area that took longest to colour in was the backstop arrangement. How do you stop checks going up on the currently unmarked border between Ireland and Northern Ireland as the UK leaves the EU? Recently, the EU has bowed to the UK demand to have a temporary UK-wide customs arrangement. But some Brexiteers are convinced that's a ploy to lock the UK into EU institutions, and they're saying so before they've even seen the text.
If it is as in the reports, it really is about as bad as you could possibly imagine. It is vassal state stuff. We are going to be kept in a kind of economic and political captivity, unable to shape EU legislation and regulation, but having to accept it ourselves, not being able to do free trade deals. And the kicker is that we haven't even really protected the union.
He was piling pressure on those who stayed in the cabinet to quit now, including fellow Brexiteers like the International Trade Secretary Liam Fox. He and the Health Secretary are amongst the first to have one-on-one meetings with the Prime Minister and to take a look at a Brexit treaty that is said to run to 500 pages.
The Prime Minister's going to be working hard to get the best deal for the country, and it could be, let's see how it goes tomorrow, but it sounds as if we're moving things on.
The UK's lead official at the negotiations, Ollie Robbins, has also brokered a declaration on the future relationship. The detailed negotiations on that don't start until after Brexit next year. Some ardent Remainers say if not too much changes in the meantime, they might back the Prime Minister.
I realise I'm going to have to be somewhat pragmatic and just see how much we preserve. So long as the agreement preserves open borders for as long as it takes, that's all borders, British borders with Europe, no barriers to trade and investment, for as long as it takes to decide what we're going to change to, if we're going to change, I will vote for it. Falls short of that, chances are I shall vote against it.
A rare emollient voice tonight as hardline Brexiteers brief out the line to take and rush to the microphones.
I think you can take it that this is a widespread feeling across the ERG.
A counter-attack is on the way if there's a cabinet-approved deal to sell.
Our political editor, Gary Gibbon. Well, the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, emerged from number 10 a few minutes ago. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think that the important thing tonight is that we will actually look at what's been tabled. I've talked to the Prime Minister about where she thinks we've got to. I've said that I think all the Cabinet will need to read this through, we'll need to discuss it tomorrow afternoon. The important thing is that we do what's best for Britain, what's best for the United Kingdom, and that we deliver a Brexit that the British people will feel fulfills the terms of the referendum.
Well, with me now is the Shadow Brexit Secretary, Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, have you seen what this deal is all about? Have you seen the details?
We haven't seen the details, but we know from the negotiations just how shambolic they've been, and therefore this is highly unlikely to be a good deal.
You're
from the
prejudging
country.
then?
We will look at the detail of it, but obviously we've been watching very, very closely what's been going on, very close to the negotiations, been working here, talking to people in Brussels, and therefore, given where the government has been throughout this episode, this is unlikely to be the breakthrough. This is unlikely to be good for the country. And you've seen the reaction to it already.
But hang on, it sounds as if you're already telling me now, without having seen the details of this deal, that you are probably going to say that it does not pass your 6 tests and therefore will be voted down.
Well, at the very beginning of the process, when the Prime Minister started, we said these are the conditions if you want our support at the end of the exercise. We've been at this for 18 months, watching every twist and turn. And it looks to me like the Prime Minister is a long way from home on our test. Obviously, we will look at it, we'll look at the detail. But as I say, given the shambolic way, this has not been a negotiation that is, as it were, genuinely in the national interest. It's been a negotiation about what can the Prime Minister get past her cabinet.
But the Chief Whip, Julian Smith, said tonight on camera, on the record, that he is confident he has the votes, even if Jeremy Corbyn says you've got to vote against it. So there are at least 20 Labour rebels who will vote with the government.
I've been talking to the Labour Party. We're very clear in our position. We're very clear about our conditions. And I would say that there are not those votes there available for the government. They should be looking on their own side if they want to get this through. And by the reaction, it looks to me as though they're in a lot of trouble.
Where do you stand yourself? Because I'm confused by the Labour position, frankly. All those people there are lining up to go into the Methodist Hall, 3,000 of them, hoping for a second referendum. Are you with them or are you against them?
Well, the position we've taken is look at the decision we're going to have to make. The deal, obviously, what we're talking about today, we'll vote that down if it doesn't meet our tests and call for a general election. If we don't get that, all options must be on the table, and that includes a public vote. That was the agreed position at conference. That's the roadmap for us as we go through these next few weeks, starting really with what's developing and breaking today.
So you could still back that second referendum?
Well, we've got a structured approach. We take each decision when we get to it, but in the event that the deal falls, in the event there isn't a general election, then yes, all options are on the table, and one of those is campaigning for a public vote. But we look at things as they arrive. It's a roadmap, it's a way through the difficult decisions we have to make over the next few months.
But if you are voting against this deal, if there aren't the Labour rebels to vote with the government, you are voting for party before country. You're prepared to see the pound plunge, you're prepared to see the economy go down the tubes because you want to have a general election.
I don't accept that. There is no national interest in voting for the wrong deal or a bad deal. And for the Prime Minister to say, this is the best I could cobble together because I've had to have one eye on my cabinet, and you've got to now back a very bad deal because you get even worse, that is not acceptable.
Are you saying this is a vassal state deal?
I will wait and see the detail, but at the moment, I think this is unlikely to be the right deal for the country.
Right. Keir Starmer, thank you very much indeed. Well, even if there is now a deal on the table, there is absolutely no guarantee it'll get through Parliament, as you just heard, leaving businesses still uncertain about the future. Tonight, this programme has learned that one of Britain's biggest wholesale food suppliers, Bidfood, which supplies 40,000 customers, including schools, hospitals and supermarkets, is planning to stockpile in case there is no deal. It follows a similar move by Premier Foods, as our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, now reports.
Ah, the great British roast, where the family comes together and everything stops.
There might be the warm whiff of a deal emanating from Westminster tonight. It's not gravy, though, but gridlock at Britain's ports that's worrying the maker of Bisto.
Ah, Bisto.
Premier Foods said today it would begin stockpiling raw materials to protect itself in the event of a no deal. A £10 million hit it has no choice but to take.
It's not just Premier. Behind me is one of 20 massive warehouses owned by Bidfood, one of Britain's biggest food wholesalers and suppliers to supermarkets, schools, restaurants, pubs and hotels. But 40% of the food that it distributes comes from abroad. And Channel 4 News has learned that it too plans to stockpile supplies in the event a deal cannot be reached.
Bidfood tonight confirmed it was planning to hold up to 6 weeks' worth of critical stock, especially food used for meals in schools and hospitals. In a statement, it told this programme.
Bidfood has been shaping plans for some time. Our initial assessments have suggested that in the event of a no-deal Brexit, we may need an additional 7,000 pallets of stock. And like many other businesses, we're having to consider alternative warehousing locations to house contingency stock.
The food industry, just like cars and medicines, a stark example of the vulnerability of just-in-time supply chains. A source inside the supermarket Morrison's told us it was busy assessing other routes into the UK by air and sea if Dover grinds to a halt, saying it's their single biggest fear, given nearly a third of what we eat enters via Britain's busiest port. To help smooth that process, Channel 4 News has learned the government has also set aside additional funding to help deal with the onslaught of expected customs checks. The plans seen by this programme show an £8 million support package being prepared by the Treasury, designed, it says, to help the customs industry in the event of a no deal. £5 million is allocated to help fund training, another £3 million to support new technology. But the industry estimates up to 12,000 extra customs agents would be needed to handle as many as 100 million extra declarations. So many believe the money simply isn't enough and has come too late.
This £8 million for customs agencies is only a tiny drop in the ocean, and that's very late in the day. We're really concerned that lots of things won't be ready in time, and even the HMRC's own chief has said that any arrangements post the 29th of March will be suboptimal as far as customs is concerned.
Of course, any government intervention is welcome, but for some, like Premier Foods and Bidfood, perhaps too late. They're voting with their wallets and their pallets to keep the food flowing.
Well, joining me now is Tony Blair's former Director of Communications and now a supporter of a second Brexit referendum, Alistair Campbell, and the Conservative MP and Chair of the European Research Group, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Welcome to you both. Jacob Rees-Mogg, you've been tweeting or saying tonight, white flags over Whitehall. What do you mean by that?
This is assuming that the RTE report is right, and it is deeply unsatisfactory that the first reports don't even come to British media, not Channel 4 News, you would have thought should know first, about something that is happening affecting the future of our nation. It goes to, what am I saying?
All right.
It does, but it's primarily about the UK.
So you think it's surrender?
Well, everything we've heard, assuming it's accurate, is the white flags going up all over Whitehall, that the Customs Union would be harder to get out of under the backstop than it is under Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. The standards issue for Northern Ireland means that Dublin will have more say over the rules of Northern Ireland than London or Belfast, and we're paying £39 billion for what?
But you've lost your battle, haven't you? She has outfoxed you. She has run down the clock, she's outfoxed you, and Julian Smith, the Chief Whip, has said that he's got the votes.
Well, I'll believe that when I see it. If you look at the votes against this already, the DUP are going to vote against it. We already have 51 members of the ERG who have gone online to say they will vote against it and stand up for Brexit. And you've got people like Joe Johnson, who are not in the ERG, saying that this sort of deal is vassalage. I think it's the job of the Chief Whip to be confident and say he can win, but he won't win on this. He will lose unless he gets the support of the Labour Party, but you've just heard from Sir Keir Starmer that he won't have that. There may be 20 Labour rebels, but our numbers are much stronger than that.
You agree with him, don't you?
I agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yes.
I agree.
In terms of the vassal state.
I think Joe Johnson spelt it out. It is vassalage, and we're giving money, and we're getting what in return. Now, Jacob and I might come at this from completely different perspectives, but I don't think anybody can pretend. There's not a single person in the country who voted either way in June the 23rd, 2016, who voted for this. And that's why I believe these thousands of people are queuing up tonight to go in to demand that it goes back to the people and they can actually say, is this what you voted?
But if there is a deal, if it goes through Cabinet, if it goes through Parliament, those people out there might as well go to the pub and not waste their time going to your meeting.
I don't agree with you at all, because I'm sorry to agree, well, not sorry, but I agree with Jacob on this one. Yeah. I don't believe they will have the votes. I don't believe how anybody who voted Brexit can support this, and I don't believe how any Labour MP can actually support this either.
Right. Are you going to make news tonight, Jacob Rees-Mogg, by swinging behind a second referendum? It's the only way out. Second referendum, go back to the country, make your case.
A second referendum is a loser's referendum. We've had the referendum, it was won by Leave. We then had a general election where both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party said that they were committed to implementing the result of the referendum. And that's what we should do. We owe it to democracy to implement the result of the referendum, the biggest vote in our nation's history, not to change it just because a few people who lost are unhappy.
Is the consequence of everything that is happening today a permanent split in the Tory party, the end of the Tory party as we know it?
I think there is a risk that we are in 1846 territory. That if the Prime Minister wishes to push ahead with this, if the Cabinet doesn't stop her, it is very divisive for the Conservative Party, though the Labour Party is quite split as well.
It is quite split, isn't it? But it is. Jeremy Corbyn is determined not to give you what you want.
Well, he seems to be at the moment, but Jeremy Corbyn, there are lots of facets to Jeremy Corbyn. One of them is that he says he listens to the members. Labour Party members, by a massive majority, want this put back to the people, and if it is put back to the people, they want to remain in the European Union. And I suspect that where we are heading, actually, is to a debate, the country deciding, do you want no deal and all the chaos that it brings, or do you actually want no Brexit, which is what all these people want?
I mean, we're in the heart of Westminster, Westminster Abbey, the Houses of Parliament, 10 Downing Street, this meeting here tonight. This is the fulcrum of British politics today. We are at a very perilous moment for this country, aren't we? Whatever happens.
You're absolutely right. Today is potentially a pivotal moment. Assume that what's been leaked is accurate and the future of our nation for a generation is being determined, and it is being determined badly and against so much of what the Prime Minister herself said, that she said we would be out of the customs union, that no Prime Minister could divide up Northern Ireland, and that we would take back control of our laws, our money and our borders. This is not what's happening, and we need to get back to what the Prime Minister promised the electorate. She must stick to her word.
But she is also the Prime Minister of all Britons. She was elected to represent the entire country, a country that is hopelessly and bitterly divided. Isn't the only thing she can do is to come up with a compromise that leaves everyone unhappy, but the majority of people not totally distraught?
And that's what she's tried to do, and she's failing to do that. She, I think, has gone into this thinking, right, you've got people like me over here who, you know, think this is a terrible thing that's happening to the country and you have to do what you can to stop it. People over there like Jacob who think no deal is fine, and she's sort of saying, I'll try and do something in the middle. But there's something in the middle doesn't add up.
What would you have done differently in her position?
In her position, I think the problem was, when she, after the referendum, she came out and instead of actually trying to bring the country together, I think she went far too far to try to keep Jacob's people happy.
And look what's happened. He's just as unhappy as he was.
Because she cannot deliver what it is that Jacob and his people want, and therefore she's ended up pleasing absolutely nobody.
You can never be satisfied, can you, Jacob, when it comes to this?
What I would say is that she should have listened, actually, to Michel Barnier, who said very clearly at the beginning, you can be a member of the European Union or you can be a third country. And the government has tried to argue for a middle course that nobody was offering. She should either have backed Alistair or she should have backed my position. This middle muddle fiddle fuddle is not working and is humiliating for the nation.
Middle muddle fiddle fuddle. If there's another referendum, right, if it does come to that, the country surely will be just as divided then as it is now.
Well, the country is divided, and if you did have another referendum on the outcome of the negotiations, then of course there'd be a bitter debate. But what I think has been really interesting about this referendum is the country is just not uniting around it at all. And I think what would happen, we had an ill-informed debate, we had a lot of lies told, we had a lot of fantasies peddled. We now do have a more informed electorate. I think we can have an informed debate between, I suspect it will be between no deal or no Brexit.
No middle muddle fiddle fuddle here. We're trying to be as crystal clear as possible. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Alistair Campbell, thank you.
Bénédicte Paviot is there. Bénédicte, it's all happening.
Yes, finally, after months and months of false starts, of complex negotiations, losing a Brexit secretary from Dominic, we now have Dominic Raab, we used to have David Davis. It looks like there is a moment of truth and a breakthrough. What we are hearing here is that there has been agreement on a technical level, on a draft text between the United Kingdom and the EU negotiators. We know that late into the night last night and the night before, they were really trying to get that deal. And as you absolutely correctly say, now it is really going to be up to politicians. So we gather that individual cabinet ministers are being summoned to 10 Downing Street, the official residence of the British Prime Minister Theresa May. They will probably be shown in full this text of withdrawal. And the reason I say this is a moment of truth is that the Prime Minister is under pressure really now from both sides, from Brexiteers within her cabinet and also Remainers. So the moment of truth is, will there be more resignations from both Brexiteers and Remainers? Will they, cabinet ministers, will they support or not this draft text? We had, as soon as recently as last Friday, the latest resignation, the 7th, of a minister from the cabinet over Brexit. That was Joe Johnson, the Transport Secretary. Of course, you'll remember that of his brother, the former Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson. So this really is a moment of truth. And we're hearing that there is then tomorrow evening in Brussels this meeting of EU ambassadors. And then on Monday now, we're hearing there's a meeting in Brussels of the EU 27 Europe ministers. So events moving fast. I should just add that there was already the usual weekly cabinet meeting this morning that Theresa May conveyed, and we gather there will now be one early tomorrow afternoon here on Wednesday, sorry, beg your pardon.
I'm going to read to you, Bénédicte, one reaction. It's from the spokesperson for the Northern Irish Unionist DUP party. That's important because they have 10 MPs that prop up Theresa May's government.
Indeed.
And they're saying, quote, "We have to wait to see a deal. Our red lines are well known." What can we read into that?
Well, we know that even the withdrawal agreement that is now much disputed back in December, that was so crucial and agreed at the nth hour, was scuppered a few days before by the DUP. As you say, this is a minority Conservative government that needs those votes, because although tonight and right now we are concentrating on this possible Brexit deal on the technical level, and depending on what happens in cabinet, if let's say this government survives, there aren't too many crucial resignations, the Prime Minister survives all of this, her next problem is getting it through the British Parliament. And there is no clarity on whether she can do that. So although this is a huge moment of truth and seemingly agreement, what is now going to happen in Parliament, nobody knows.
And once again, the cabinet is now, the UK government is now confirming as we speak that indeed there is a draft Brexit deal, one that will be discussed at that 2 p.m. meeting Wednesday of the UK cabinet. Bénédicte, again, you're saying we could have perhaps more surprise. Is there really a chance that some of the cabinet may resign over this before there's even that meeting in Brussels?
Anything is possible. We're getting an unraveling of the meeting back in Chequers in July. Remember, that meeting of the whole cabinet was supposed to be the moment of truth. So this was in the country residence. The reason I specify this is that's why it's called the Chequers deal. So it's the country residence of the Prime Minister. And that Chequers deal. Ever since it was agreed, seemingly, of a consensus, a unity, so an agreed position of the British government, the whole of that cabinet, we got those resignations 48 hours later of the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, and a few hours later of the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, both of whom, well, particularly Boris Johnson, has been very vocal as to why he can't support that. He says it's the worst of all deals, this Chequers deals. It needs to be completely reworked. He can't support it in any form. He supports the Prime Minister herself, but not this Chequers deal. And we're getting, again and again over the last few days, ministers who are briefing the British media saying, actually, there are many things we don't agree with. So, yes, we could get more resignations, depending on who they are, how high up the government they are, how vocal they are about it. We could have a really unravelling in that sense in the next 48 hours. Possibly not. We know that ministers, other ministers, are considering their position. Who told us that? Joe Johnson, who until last Friday was the Transport Minister. And most of the British media is also confirming that they are being briefed by certain cabinet ministers that they could walk. So we'll see what happens. And Theresa May's, obviously her advisors and herself, this is a moment of truth for her and for this government. And of course, the DUP feels it's a moment of truth because they very much have their red lines, as they say, and that could come a cropper as far as the vote both in Parliament, or could they take a position where they say, and they have said in the last few days, they support the Conservative Party, but if you want, their contribution to the government, which is here called confidence supply, is not to the person, is not to Theresa May herself. So let's stand by, let's see what happens, let's see who talks, let's see who walks.
All right, Bénédicte Paviot reporting from London on this fast-breaking story.
La parola all'onorevole Farage. Well, Mrs. Merkel, many of my Eurosceptic colleagues have been booing you this morning, but they shouldn't be in a way, because the British should be cheering you. Without you, we'd never have made it over the line with Brexit, and I want to thank you very much for that. And of course, many of these Eurosceptic groups on the right, the centre and the left will come back here after the next European elections in huge numbers, directly as a result of your immigration and asylum policy. Your weak and cope led to a huge migrant tide, indeed a stampede, that came across the Mediterranean. Young men coming from very different cultures who were not going to integrate. Young men, none of whom would have qualified as being genuine refugees. And I think in many ways, we looked at it in the referendum and we said, we don't want to be part of an increasingly German-dominated European Union, and we certainly don't want to pay the price for Mrs. Merkel's errors. And I believe, having heard you today and listening to senior French politicians over the last couple of days, that for us leaving the European Union is now indeed a liberation. It's a European Union that we're told is now to become an empire, a militarised European Union, an undemocratic European Union, a European Union that seeks to continually expand to the east, a European Union that has launched a new Cold War against the United States of America, a European Union that tries to rewrite history. And I think 100 years on from the armistice, we should be genuinely worried. The idea that this new militarised union is somehow a recipe for peace, I suggest you all sit back and think a little bit more carefully. Maybe you should all reread history. The European project was set up to stop German domination. What you've seen today is a naked takeover bid. So I think Brexit becomes a necessity after this. And for the rest of the countries, Mrs. Merkel, you've had a long, successful career. But your political decision to open up the doors unconditionally is the worst decision we've seen in post-war politics in Europe. Is it not time for you at last to admit that you were wrong? Is it not time for you to say to German communities and many others, I'm sorry for what I've done to you and the problems I've inflicted upon you for many decades to come?
Northern Ireland's always been different. In the sense that it has a land border, always has. Devolution occurred first in Northern Ireland. Some have suggested, for example, that Scotland could have a similar deal to Northern Ireland. That just shifts the problem, the border between England and Scotland. It doesn't deal with the issue of the border in Ireland. I think we have to be flexible as far as Northern Ireland is concerned. When it comes to biosecurity, for example, Northern Ireland is different. It's part of the island of Ireland in terms of biosecurity, and therefore there are checks on animals and food moving into Northern Ireland from GB. Similarly, the energy market is an island-wide market on the island of Ireland. So Northern Ireland is a little detached from GB in any event. For me, what's hugely important is we move pretty swiftly to a situation where there is no room for grievance. What does that mean? Well, there needs to be set up, as I mentioned before, a council of ministers where we all have a voice. It can be an equal voice in terms of voting, and I know that Mark Drakeford has suggested a weighted voting system to reflect the size of England, which I think is perfectly sensible. But if there's any suggestion that Westminster is accreting powers to itself or running over the smaller nations, I think there are dangers there. At the end of the day, the UK is a union, just like the EU is a union. It's older, no question about that, but it's still in many ways a multinational union. It's a union of support. That's why I think it's hugely important that this is done, that we recognise that the UK has to change in order to reflect its constituent parts and in order for people to feel that they're being listened to.
The devolution that should have been automatic raises the question of how serious this government is about devolution. And if they don't believe in it, then people will start to draw conclusions. There is more centralisation going to take place in Whitehall as a result of leaving the European Union, because all these powers are going back to Whitehall from Brussels. And so in relation to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, this is a far more centralised Britain that you would have after March next year. And if these powers are not devolved, then they're held in the centre, and the principle of devolution seems to be at risk. But the other issue that I think will concern people, could you not find a way and why are they not discussing a way of giving devolved parliaments or assemblies access to Europe? I mean, for non-devolved areas, why can't the Scottish Parliament or the Welsh Assembly talk to the European Union about measures that would be relevant? I mentioned an investment bank. If Britain doesn't want it, Scotland would want an investment bank, want to have a joint venture with the European Investment Bank, banned under the devolution settlement because it's a foreign treaty. But I see no reason why that shouldn't be able to happen. But what I'm suggesting is not the proposal itself. I'm suggesting we should be thinking about these long-term issues. And instead of a debate that is internally driven by what suits the backseat drivers, the hard Brexiteers of the Conservative Party, because that's what it is. They are the English nationalist tail, if you like, wagging the British bulldog on this occasion. I mean, that's what's happening.
Torquil Clyden, Daily Record. Gordon, you talk about a second EU referendum, inevitably. You must talk about a second Scottish independence referendum. I'm also intrigued by this idea that Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland could bypass Whitehall, could have their own relationships with the European Union. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Scotland is different in this respect. There is no doubt that the Scottish Parliament has ambitions, including Labour, possibly some Conservatives, certainly Liberals as well as Nationalists, to have a role in some of these decisions that would be classified as out of bounds for the Parliament at the moment. And I personally think that you've got to be flexible about these issues. What I've noticed in the last 2 years is a far less flexible attitude to how the union should develop in the future. So you have all the rhetoric about our precious union. These are the words you always get, our precious union. But actually the openness to honouring the devolution settlement has diminished, and that's the problem. So I don't see why the Scottish Parliament shouldn't be able to sign a treaty with the European Union on a devolved matter, not non-devolved matters, but on a devolved matter. And I don't see why, even if we were outside the European Union, that would be prevented. And I don't see that in devolved areas that Westminster should try to say that this is not possible. So I think that's an open debate about what should happen. Now, again, I'm what here I'm trying to do is say there are many options open to us as a country, but we're not having a debate on these at the moment. We're in a very narrow area of whether, and the area is actually, can we get a short-term temporary fix so that the government can actually say that on March the 29th next year they've left the European Union, and yet all the questions are unresolved. We should be having a debate that opens up these issues so that the general public can have a view on them.
And a second independence referendum?
I think that's unlikely at the moment.
Here on the aisle.
Thank you. Sean Spears from Green Alliance. A question on devolution. You point out that agriculture and environment are devolved, but of course they were devolved when we were in the European single market. If we leave the European single market and come to have a sort of UK single market, how do you make that work?
Well, this is the issue, isn't it? I mean,
I wonder if you had the answer.
I mean, who decides the parameters of the UK single market now? Because if you've devolved agriculture in principle, as well as some of the powers to the Scottish Parliament, and you've assumed, or people have assumed, that all agriculture would be devolved if we left the European Union, then the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly and the Northern Ireland Assembly have got to have a role in how you design the internal market of the United Kingdom. And that's what the issue is. The government wants to say centrally, we will define all the rules of the single market, whereas Carwyn Jones, he's been here, hasn't he? And he took a legal action. He took an action in court against the UK government, saying that automatically these powers should have come to Wales. And I don't know if that's resolved in the courts yet, but he believes that under the Constitution setting up the Welsh Assembly, or giving it its latest powers, he has the right to have these powers under law. And then it's for the government of the day to talk to the various assemblies and the Scottish Parliament about how you construct the single market and how you can get an agreement on that.
In what sounded a tiny bit like a threat to Mrs May in Downing Street, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon talked today about preparing the ground for another independence referendum if Scotland wasn't able to stay in the European Union. She said a draft referendum bill will be published next week. That doesn't necessarily mean there'll be another vote, of course, but she certainly was putting down a marker.
Nicola Sturgeon is on a mission to put the brakes on Theresa May's hard Brexit.
If that's the insecure, unstable prospect we face as part of the UK, then no one will have the right to deny Scotland the chance to choose a better.
She told a delighted conference an independence referendum bill will be published for consultation next week, and dared the Prime Minister to call her bluff.
If you think for one single second that I am not serious about doing what it takes to protect Scotland's interests, then think again.
But Scotland's unionists are less impressed.
A clear majority of Scots have no wish to return to the divisive referendums of the past. They want to move on, and none of the questions that Brexit raises are answered by ripping Scotland out of our own union of nations that's worth more than 4 times more to us in terms of trade.
And one recent study produced by the Taxpayers Alliance returned some alarming numbers. They report Scotland had a deficit of £14.8 billion last year. That's 9.5% of its GDP. The limit for countries joining the EU is 3%. To get to that level, the Taxpayers Alliance pressure group says Scotland could raise the basic rate of income tax from 20% to 39%, or cut its health spending by 82%.
With all this tough talk from Nicola Sturgeon today, she hasn't yet committed to having another independence referendum. That hesitancy is because the SNP are just not sure that they have the numbers yet to make sure they would win it this time. So I've come to Nicola Sturgeon's own constituency, just a few miles from the conference, to find out if there is an appetite for IndyRef 2.
Atif and Shabana run an estate agents and, like the majority of Scots, voted to remain in the UK and the EU.
I think people are probably getting fed up now with the referendum after referendum, but not enough information.
But Shabana thinks Brexit could be damaging for Scotland.
That's going to actually possibly have an effect on how people are going to vote when it comes to independence.
You think that people could be pushed towards independence if Brexit is...
Possibly.
Nicola Sturgeon isn't ready to gamble on IndyRef 2 yet. but she has raised the stakes in negotiations with Theresa May. Peter Smith, News at 10, Glasgow.
It feels a long way from Westminster here, but still not far enough to escape the politics. And now people are contemplating the prospect of another big decision, like Ray, who voted against independence in 2014. Have you got the appetite for another referendum?
Not at all, because I think referenda tend to be so divisive. People wanting to take sides, and I think the last time it was bad enough. I think doing it again, particularly at this time when there's so many problems, I think it's just not the thing that people want now.
Only 40% of voters here wanted to leave the UK last time, but politics students Joanna and Connor told me that result's not relevant now. Brexit has changed the goalposts.
I think there's a bit of a consensus for leaving the UK in our politics class.
Yeah, I think we're all very similar. We all think it's a very good idea to stay in the EU but leave the UK.
Many business owners here agree. Down the road they're selling sheds made from Swedish timber. They import 200,000 tonnes of it a year. Staying in Europe is the boss's top priority.
As it is now, the prices are rising due to uncertainty, and if we're taken out of the EU, then it's inevitable that these prices will rise twofold and probably price us well out of the market.
But in the workshop, there are mixed feelings.
I just feel it's not right. How can you, be for not leaving Europe, but be for leaving Britain? It just doesn't make sense to me.
What do you think the result would be?
Of a second referendum for Scotland, I think yes might just have it, but it's more because of people being fed up with the way the UK government have treated Scotland than actually wanting independence.
The political landscape has moved. Will another referendum mean another giant shift? Tessa Chapman, 5 News, Perth.
This is my family, the Horvath family.
And this is my mum, Ursula, and we are the Novak family.
This is my brother, and this is my mum, and my dad's at work, and that's my family.
If you thought you'd heard it all on Brexit, come into these homes. Meet these young people.
What are you going to be, Kitty?
I'm going to be a Broadway star.
Born in Eastern Europe,
Meow.
raised in Scotland.
Half of me is Polish and half of it's not, I guess.
A voice, they say, almost entirely missing from the Brexit debate.
I don't think it's been heard at all, at least not by the politicians.
It's tea time in Airdrie for Kitty's family. She's one of more than 600,000 children living in the UK who were born elsewhere in the EU.
How would you describe your nationality?
It's really hard because I'm always like, I'm Hungarian, I was born there and I'll always be Hungarian. But at the same time, I feel pretty Scottish sometimes.
In the East End of Glasgow, student Marta and her mum.
Do you ever feel sort of torn between the two different parts of your identity?
Yeah, when I go to Poland, I feel sort of like an outcast because like my accent's a bit different when I speak Polish as well.
And in Dalgety Bay in Fife, 13-year-old Olivia.
People that don't necessarily know me that much, when they find out that I'm not from here, they're kind of surprised. It kind of feels nice that I know that someone would think I'm from here.
Brexit will not be the biggest event in these young lives.
So, when you came to Scotland, how much English could you speak?
Like 2 words.
They've been turned upside down once already.
How important was it to you at the start to feel like that you fitted in?
Quite a lot. Like, it was quite important to me. In this world, you get judged for everything, so...
When she came to Scotland, Kitty was 9. Her father found work as a plumber. Her mother sorts recycled clothes.
1 or 2 times when I'm on the train talking to my mum in Hungarian, like I was on the phone and this woman just started shouting at me saying, "You're in an English-speaking country, why don't you just learn the language?" I just felt really angry, like, why would you say stuff like that? You don't know me. And I can speak English, I speak English perfectly fine, but just because I'm on the phone to my mother, who speaks Hungarian and she speaks English as well, and I'm talking in my mother tongue, which I don't want to lose because that is part of who I am. Like, what gives you the right?
A recent University of Strathclyde study of over 1,000 Eastern European children living in Britain found more than 3/4 had experienced some kind of racist abuse.
I did get a few comments, like at the start, people would call me like a Polish cow and stuff like that, but it doesn't really,
They call you a Polish cow?
Yeah.
And how old were you then?
Like 11 or 12.
For these young people, does Brexit feel personal?
Well, I feel like I'm part of the club right now, but I feel like the members of that club are trying to get rid of me. That's what I'm feeling right now. So I feel like, I love the club. I love the club so much, but I feel like the members of the club are trying to get rid of me.
How does it affect how Hungarian you feel?
I just feel like I have to become more Scottish now to fit in with British society and just try to fit in here to make sure I can stay here.
What does that mean, trying to be more Scottish?
Just to act like more like them and act less like Hungarians, so they'll accept me more. What?
After Brexit, each of these families will be asked to register for what the government calls settled status.
Do you know what the process is after Brexit for what you need to do in terms of the legal stuff?
No, not at all. Does anyone know?
They may find settled status confusing, but all these families say they would apply. The government has been warned it risks a second Windrush generation among thousands who may not.
To what extent are they themselves, these families, even aware of how potentially precarious their situation is?
I don't know if the vast majority of them are aware. In our study, we investigated these issues with over 1,000 young people. And the sense that we got is that people are worried, and young people are worried about what's going to happen to them. The vast majority of them are not aware of how their status is going to change after Brexit.
Marta, whose mum also works in a clothes sorting factory, would sooner become a British citizen. Cost for each person, over £1,000.
As soon as the Brexit vote happened, we looked into it and stuff. It's so expensive, and we just it's not something we would be able to afford right now.
Does that make you sad that money is a barrier?
I never thought it'd be that expensive actually, just to become a citizen.
For Marta, Kitty and Olivia, Brexit is coming fast. And the world they thought they knew is changing all over again.
Where you're from and stuff like that doesn't define you as a person.
I think this is my place.
I want someone to tell me that I am safe in this country or I'm not going to get kicked out. I just want certainty.
French jam.
French jam, did you hear that? French
Won't
jam.
be able to afford it after Brexit.
From a Brexiteer.
You do know that that'll double in price now, don't you?
Yes.
Of course it won't. The import tax on that, how much have you paid for that?
It's for the box.
Shut up, See, you're all just too negative.
Do you want to sharpen knife?
No, just be positive.
I don't trust you with a sharp knife.
These people have said there's going to be visas. You have to have a visa to get into France next year. That's all we get because we go to France every year.
Yeah,
you
I'll get you
realise
some scissors. I'll get you
do
some
realise
scissors.
you'll need a visa? No. How do you know?
Yourself.
I just know, Kelly. You just know. I think largely the families very much were Remainers apart from Mum, so I think we have to not talk about it because I don't want her to feel like she's ganged up on.
Out of the loop.
It worries me at the moment, like you're filming this, because there's so much hatred now towards people that, are outers. I mean, they're being absolutely vile to people, and you think, why? We've all got our own opinions, and the world's a big place, get on with it.
My son-in-law's a butcher, a local butcher. I'm back today just doing a few deliveries for him. I served in Staffordshire Police for 30 years. Regularly, every week I would say, at least weekly, we would have to accept maybe 10 or 15 illegal immigrants that had jumped off lorries at Hilton Services or wherever they got the opportunity to jump off the lorries, and then they'd be arrested by the traffic police officers. And I believe that a lot of people who voted Brexit thought that they were going to solve that problem by leaving Europe. But in actual fact, that problem has got nothing to do with being a member of the EU. It's illegal immigration. And do I think that there's an underlying racial hatred in this country? No, I don't. I think most people in this country are tolerant. Hello, boys.
Shame they were the only ones that voted, otherwise we might not be in this position.
Well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Did you vote, Adam?
Yeah, well,
no, well, there
you go then.
So they're trying to make it as it was before, but without being part of the European Union.
But you can't do that.
So it's just, that's why it's impossible to strike the deal, isn't it?
I think you've done well under the circumstances. It's all right the Labour turning around and saying, well, we don't want this, we don't want that, but they've come up with no ideas.
She needs to get some back in and go for it.
The trouble is, if you got rid of Theresa May, who would you put in? Certainly I wouldn't vote for Boris Johnson.
Obviously Europe need us as well. So Europe need us as well.
You've either got to make a strong decision and say, right, we're confident that we can go on our own, or you've got to say, no, we need Europe as much as we've done in the past.
There'll be a shortage of English meat. I mean, there's been...
It'll be exported.
Yeah. I mean, the lamb this year has been extortionately pricey because it's all been exported because they get more money for it.
Is that because of the low pound?
Yeah. Myself, little independents like me are going to have to pay more for my products that I've been buying from the local farms for years. And that's not really right, is it?
It's Chinese time.
That's not here.
That's nice, you can get it everywhere.
Like chow mein. Any chips? Yeah, please.
What was traffic like when you run today, Dad? Was it?
Traffic was good today.
People don't feel they've got
Yeah,
any
but
input into that.
but how
So people are now backtracking and thinking, hold on a minute, this isn't actually what I signed up for when I thought we were going to leave.
That's the whole problem, isn't it?
But Heather, it'll be sorted.
Issues will have to sort it out.
Yeah, but you can't...
Isn't it nice?
We've never been here before, so how can you say they're going to be sorted? Because no one knows what they're on about, do they? No one's been here to say that's what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen.
It's not going to stay up in the air. One way or another.
Yeah, it might be sorted out for good, it might be sorted out for bad.
Well, yeah, it might, but you don't know. But one way or the other, it can be sorted.
So if it's sorted out for bad, what's the point of doing it in the first place?
There's nothing to sort.
But we want our cake and eat it, don't we?
Yeah.
We want to pay less into Europe, but still trade with Europe and the rest of the world. So why are we leaving the EU?
I know, that's what I'm saying.
There is only the EU that you can buy stuff from.
Yeah, of course.
No, but along with the EU, you get things like maternity leave and you get paid sick leave.
We'll still get
it. Well, will we?
Yeah, once we're out, our Parliament will look at all those rules and regulations and laws and say, well, that doesn't apply to us anymore, rescind it.
She's got to you. She's got to you. She has.
No.
It's just accept.
It's accepted he's wrong.
I'm still a Remainer. I want to stay in the EU. I don't believe that our government will do away with the good stuff that's been introduced.
It just feels like there's this massive cultural change that's come along with Brexit. The people that are seen to be taking over and making decisions, there's genuinely no one that I would wish to vote for because I don't identify with any of these people anymore.
I think that there's nobody good to choose from, is there?
But there's only one answer you sided now, and actually everyone's got to start with Theresa May. None of us know what the right answer is. She's doing her best, and I feel for her, whether we're Conservative, Labour, whatever you are.
Anybody want a glass of white wine?
When we get going.
This is quite tame, to be honest.
Wait till we start on religion.
In a fast-moving world, keeping in touch is essential.
But it shouldn't cost an arm and a leg, and it should be possible wherever you are. That's why Parliament is bringing telecoms rules up to date. MEPs want to put an end to expensive calls within the EU. From May 2019, phone calls should be capped at 19 cents and texts at just 6 cents.
In many countries of the European Union, this is going to know substantive decreasing of the cost, which is something that I'm sure the European consumers they will welcome.
It would be easier for customers to monitor their phone use and keep an eye on their bills. Remember, you're not married to your phone provider, so leaving it when you find a better deal should be easier. You could even receive compensation if they are too slow to let you go. Your personal information is precious. This is why Parliament wants to promote secure end-to-end encryption. Web-based services like Skype and WhatsApp will also be covered by the same rules. And because no one likes hanging around for slow internet connections, MEPs want super high-speed 5G to start hitting major European cities in 2020.
Yes, come along then, come along. Come along, young Wombles. Just in time for Womble TV. There we are. Come on. Now we'll just switch it on. Won't take long to warm up, I'm sure.
And when people ask me why I put myself through it, the long hours, the pressure, the criticism, the insults that inevitably go with this job, I tell them this. I do it to root out injustice and to give everyone in our country a voice. And that's why, when I reflect on my time in politics, the things that make me proud are not the positions I've held, the world leaders I've met, the great global gatherings I've attended, but knowing that I made a difference, that I helped those who couldn't be heard.
Oh, yeah. I always like that joke. Oh, what a load of rubbish.
Our goal is simple, a fairer country for all those born here, for those who have chosen to make this their home, and for the generations yet to come. That is why we believe in an independent Scotland. So know this, believe in this, work for this. Hope is possible. A better future is within our grasp. And together we are going to make it happen.
Well, I grew up in a Scotland where the decisions about our future are taken by the people who care most about Scotland, the people who live here.
Now playing Daniel Kaur, Wise Old River.
Where do you belong? Where do you call home? And where are we now? Wise old river, have you traveled far with the tears of the lonely and the broken hearts? Is there hope further on for the battle scarred? Is there hope today? Where are we now? Where have we been? When this life we lead comes to an end, where will we be? Where are we now? Wise old
Now playing Night of Fire, Peace in Sunlight.
Coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
Next up is Morgan Greig, Tammy.
Tammy, ooh, Tammy, you tell me you love me, but I know that's a lie, and I wonder, why don't you love me anymore? Tammy, ooh, Tammy, your kiss has gone cold and there's ice in your smile, and I wonder, why don't you love me anymore?
I'll cry on my pillow.
Next we have Cordless Pillow.
'Cause I'm still a child, and your lies push me back. I'll sleep through the days now, feel nothing at all. Tell people I'm out of town, ignore the calls. And I'll cry on my pillow. I'll cry on my pillow. I'll cry on my pillow. Make room for my pain. Hide out in my shadow. I won't say a thing. I'll numb all my pain, put my feelings away. Don't worry about me if I say I'm okay. Hey, 'cause I won't die now that you're gone. But I'll cry on my pillow. I'll cry on my pillow. Through the days now, feel nothing at all. Tell people I'm out of town, ignore the calls. And I'll cry on my pillow. I'll cry on my pillow. Forget what you say.
Playing now. Redneck Surfers, Ellipsis.
If I were you, but I'm not. All the world's living my liver, understand that you choose to better man. I want you to fall off the boat. All started with a shiver, all that one more good man, baby.
Track playing now. Michelle Channel, Before I Go.
Is this the last song? I feel like I tried to show you I want you right here by my side. I made you smile, I've given you signs, so won't you come find me before there's no time to catch me before I go. Catch me before I go. I go. Before I go. Won't you catch me before I go?
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland, Channel Radio Ice.
It's been a minute since we've had some.
Next we have Sammy Bauer, So Much.
No more excuses to find. Giving us so much time. Such a vibe when we're alone. I'm hypnotized by how you roll. Forgive me, I'm not trying to blow. Miss the times inside my room. I just want you in my zone. Giving us so much time. 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 My sentence is forever in your debt. I confess this investment's my test. You see, patience builds commitment. Giving us so much time. Let us put aside the world we gotta know too well. Spend a little time alone, late on the phone past 12. Let us put aside the world we gotta know too well. much, so much time. Giving us so 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 much time. You tell me what I wanna hear. Play back and rewind. How many times were you playing fair? So tell me now, are you with it? Let us put aside the world we gotta know too well. Spend a little time alone, late on the phone past 12. Let us put aside the world we gotta know too well. Such a vibe when we're alone. I'm hypnotized by how you roll. Forgive me, I'm not trying to blow. It's the times inside my room. I just want you in my zone. Giving us so much, so much time. 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 Giving us so much, so much time.
Playing now. Daniel Kaur, The Journey is Long. Playing now. Jeff Hurley, Heart of Steel.
I knew it from the start. There wasn't anything that I could do. Although I tried to hide inside and tear this love apart, I couldn't hold a candle next to you. You've always been the one I want to hold me through the night and love me till the morning sun appears. And you know that you're the only one I wanted to be mine, to fill the emptiness inside this heart of steel. You've always been the one I want to hold me through the night and love me till the morning sun appears. And you know that you're the only one I wanted to be mine, to fill the emptiness inside this heart of steel. Don't wanna mold you, just wanna hold you, just wanna hold you till the morning sun appears. And remember you're the only one I wanted to be mine. You feel the emptiness inside this heart of steel.
Now playing. Lost European, I Believe in You.
Felt so cold and lonely, emotions stopped by a woman's
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio ICE.
Track playing now. Timbeek, Anonymous. Playing now. Rudy Roger, Visit from Space. Playing now. Dansberg Music, Tonight.
Tonight we don't need fights. All we need are big drums and lights. You do not have to stay. You can go home, but there's no replay. Now it's only up to you. You can decide what you're gonna do. And now you better choose. This night can change your youth. Almost everything will be changed. Your life tonight, tonight.
Hey, what's up, Adam? It's Lando.
Track playing now. Indie Thought, okay.
I'm listening to the document too damn much. And I want to know when the fuck I'm gonna have to use shit. Alright, text me.
Newsflash, I'm still the shit. Name a nigga who real is this. The realest out, I reel him in. They ain't know it, I feel him in, and they feeling it. Got their hands high as the ceiling is. Look my empire, I'm building it. Set it on fire, I'm killing it. Tell them RIP. Where you gonna find another nigga like me? All these niggas fraud got fake IDs. So I be insured like AIG in the VIP with a PYT. See what I mean? Like y'all niggas deaf. Kill one beat, then it's on to the next. Shoot 1-3, call foul from the rep. But my team goes hard in the paint, man, and y'all on the bench. But fuck y'all, you can't sit with us. Not a mean girl or a bad bitch, you just mischievous. Winning on tracks, need a piss and cup. Don't get it twisted, don't mix it up. They're talking rates and they mention us, but they're talking shit, so I don't trip too much. Click so deep, they gotta walk around us. Hey, man, they talk about us, man, it's like I've been chosen. Stay in this game, never folded, man, I'm so focused. Finally got myself something that I can go put my whole heart and my soul in. It ain't nothing but showbiz, now my career getting chauffeured. Got me feeling so golden, to live in that city of roses. Okay, hold it down and they know what's up. They say okay when I'm in the cut, and they see me shine when I'm rolling up. Yeah, we came through, showing love, hit the stage, taking dubs from the jump, yeah, hopefully overseas, do something like, okay, 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 yeah, okay, yeah, okay, 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 hit the stage, taking dubs from the jump, yeah, hopefully overseas. Yeah, I'm back like a nigga never left. Running on this beat, never running out of breath. Stay on campaign like I'm running for the press. Yeah, you running with the boys, I'll be running with the best. Yeah, you know I come from that west, and I wear it all on my vest. Ain't too many real niggas left, so you know I keep them in check. Yeah, getting paper, that's my intention. So the pitch is perfect, no Anna Kendrick. Man, let's be honest, everybody else just step beyond us. Damn, Mindy, why you flexing on them? I don't know, man, I'm just doing me. Can't tell us nothing, I'm bulletproof, I'm so hands on, and your hands off, so you can't touch us. That's low labor, need more paper, got no patience for the low maintenance, doing no favors. We top dog and got no neighbors, so I'm so thankful. Need the whole thing if that's cool with them. Ex-girls still cool with them. Fuck boys, I'm cool with them. Even though I went to high school with a nigga feeling like a champ, looking like a king. Who when they write my would challenge a kid? I won't be dropping so soon, I just tell them go put any thought on your calendars, kids. We got it for real. Cases like Ally McBeal, put us some grease on the wheel without having to deal. Tell me though, how does it feel? Okay, okay, hold it down and they know what's up. They say okay when I'm in the cut, and they see me shine when I'm rolling up. Yeah, we came through, showing love, hit the stage, taking dubs from the jump. Yeah, hopefully overseas, do something like, okay, 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 yeah, okay, 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 yeah, okay, okay.
Say it one more time.
Okay.
The coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
One, two, three.
Next we have Daniel Kaur and Nathaniel Kaur, sometimes.
Sometimes I wish that I were famous. Sometimes I wish I knew my name. Sometimes I wish that I were innocent. Sometimes
Now playing Tim Beek, Against All Odds. Next we have various artists, Common Home.
Another cold and dreary night in London. A foreign cigarette and dial tone. My arms need to hold you now in person, instead of longing, holding on the phone. I was wrong to ever think of leaving. Now I know this pain I can't survive. Went so far away, but it was self-deceiving. Take me back, make me feel alive. Things were said only time could heal. I went away, it took so long for me to see that you're the only one that was for said these are the times for courage. Stand your ground, don't ever run and hide. As I search for the person I wanna be, face up to my feelings deep inside. I'm coming home to your love. I'm coming home to your love. And I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home to your love. Ever since I went away, I knew that I'd be back someday. Near the beach, returning with the tide. I hope it's not too late for me. Take me back, set me free. I'm ready now to lose my foolish pride. I'm coming home to your love. I'm coming home to your love. I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home. I'm coming home to your love. I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home to your love.
Playing now. Rudy Roger, Summer Breeze.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio Ice.
DJ Kelvin on the deck.
Playing now. The Basement, Crazy SoundCloud.
I hit the block, I make a scene, now niggas gone crazy. I hit the weed, me and my team, now niggas gone crazy. I got a chick, I hit the mall, now niggas gone crazy. I want it all, I want the ball, so niggas gone crazy. I hit the block, I make a scene, now niggas gone crazy. I hit the weed, me and my team, now niggas gone crazy. I got a chick, I hit the mall, now niggas gone crazy. I want it all, I want the ball, so niggas gone crazy. Preach, take him to church, and she go, knee, sucking me up, and I can't breathe. I hop out this bitch, smoking too much, and I go, please, you gotta chill, cause I'm out the bus. We stash box in the corner. Sounds in my room, I'm zoning. Bitch act like she wanted. Too soon to get my act done it. Now I'm gon' do it just in time. Never trust ears, nigga, only trust eyes. Said it fuck with you, but it's only just lies. That's why you gotta always cross T's and dot eyes. Damn, a lot of charisma. Whole lot of boss, but I think I'm an amateur. The back we gon' hit my esophagus. So after the session, I'm going. Got niggas in places that know us up. Pull up the summer, you know it's us. She hit up my phone and I'm calling her. She hit up my phone and I'm showing up. I see it with my eyes closed. Feel like time froze. This is my zone. You know I know. With my eyes closed, nigga, this is hardcore. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. You gon' let me run it. Pull up the skirt and damn, I'm stunning. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. She my Mona Lisa. I'ma take a picture. Say she want a perky. Put it in the system. Diamonds on me glisten. When I touch it, listen. Might be in the kitchen, but I never do the dishes there. My niggas, they run shit. If you wantin', we gon' come quick. They wanna beyond this, but we ain't fucking with the fuck shit.